Welcome to Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffield. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, is here. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Kent.
And Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you. Jim, as long as we're talking New Year, during our final 2010 program, that's been many, many months ago, it was predicted that the top 2011 stories would be Rod Blagojevich, the state budget, crime, school reform in East St. Louis. So now that 2011 is ending, what were the top stories?
Well, I would say, better than some of those psychics that you pay $3.99 for. We were pretty close on those our choices. And as 2012 starts, it's a pretty similar lineup, with the possible exception of Blagojevich is finally going to get his fitted orange jumpsuit, unless some of his lawyers can pull another rabbit out of their hat and get him another trial. I think probably overwhelmingly this year it's going to continue to be the state budget. It has impacted so many businesses that in any way, shape, or form do business with the state. The state has now contracted with a company that is going to pay off the vendors on the short-term invoices that they owe, and then wait for the state to pay them back and collect interest from the state. We still can't fund our schools adequately. The unfunded pension mandate in the state is a deep hole that my grandchildren's grandchildren may not be able to dig us out of. I would say that the state budget, now that we have Blagojevich kind of out of the way, I think that's going to be first and foremost. With a close number two, I think it's going to be, and they're somewhat related, a close number two ending up seeing how the elections come out in November of 12, now that we've redistricted the state. We've lost a state rep, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out and what the makeup of the House and Senate in Springfield is after November of 2012.
And as far as 11 goes, your big stories of the year?
Had to be Blagojevich. Probably for our immediate area here, a close second was just the World Series, just because it was so unexpected and just come from behind. And
not a big story that anybody predicted for 2011.
Not a big story that anybody predicted a year ago this time, that's for sure. But Blagojevich made us real proud of our voting record in the state of Illinois this past year, and again, subject to any lawyers pulling tricks here, it appears he's finally going to do some time in federal prison.
Pat, the stories that we talked about at the end of 2010 were Blagojevich, the state budget, crime, school reform in East St. Louis. What ended up being the big stories for 2011?
Well, pretty much like you said, I think East St. Louis and crime were probably somewhat less so. They didn't really move the needle very much in the year 2011. The economy has so many tentacles, and I'll meld this into what we're saying about what's coming for the year 2012 as well. Economic recovery is the overarching story for every state, for everybody. How much and when? Because when that tide rises, all boats will lift, and that includes across the state of Illinois. Until that happens, I think a major story, one of the top stories in Illinois, is going to be how schools and local governments cope as the recession of state government continues to ripple into their territories. The things the state is not doing, cutting back on school bus, for example, trying to shift the cost to the regional school superintendents to the individual school districts. This sort of thing is going to continue, I'm fairly certain, and it's going to ripple through not just the schools, but also the city governments and the county governments, which will either be spending down reserves if they're fortunate, or further tightening their belts if they're not. And how that plays out where you live individually may vary very much from where I live or from where Jim lives. And so this is broken down into a whole bunch of little local stories. So I think that's a big part of it. I think out of St. Clair County, a possible big story is at what point are they going to stop using taxpayer money to subsidize MidAmerica Airport? At what point do you shutter what you've got left, if you can, turn as much of it back over to the Air Force as you can with a joint use base and stop subsidizing? I think it's something in the neighborhood of $3 million a year to the airport. The infrastructure would still be there. I still think it may be valuable to Metro East in the future, but how much subsidy you pour in the short term before you give that up, that's a story we ought to watch to see if the economy gets bad enough for St. Clair County to do that. Crime has remarkably been contracting across the country in the face of a recession. You'd think crime would go up, and it hasn't. Criminologists have all kinds of explanations for this that I won't get into, but that's been sort of a pleasant surprise. East St. Louis is a perpetual challenge for our region, but I don't see anything much in East St. Louis changing one way or the other. Electorally, some people are going to be seeing new reps, as Jim said. You're going to see new congressmen. They're going to be shifted around in congressional districts, or already have been. But the electoral front will be largely quiet. The only statewide election on the ballot would be whether Dick Durbin gets reelected to the Senate, and I think it's a reasonable bet that while the Republicans will fight like mad, that they're not going to keep that from happening. On the whimsical side, maybe there'll be some traction on the proposal for Chicago to secede or be thrown out of the state of Illinois. Don't hold your breath, but there might be some more zaniness like that. And whether Blagojevich has breathed his last gasp of news after this fairly vibrant 3-year run, we'll see.
Well, at some point in 2012, he still has to go to prison. Is that going to put him back in the news for months, or will that be a very short story?
The man hasn't gone quietly if it's just to go out to McDonald's. So whether he'll go quietly to prison is anybody's guess what may happen. I don't have any particular anticipation. It looks like his efforts are winding down. There will be appeals, but they'll take a long time. And of course, appeals don't reconsider the verdict. They just consider whether he had a fair trial. And when they're down to making claims that the judge, as we talked about in the last show, claims the judge says they've made harebrained claims, trying to find a reason to disqualify the jury and have a new trial. If we're down to harebrained, he probably doesn't have much ammunition left.
We need to take a break. We have more Metro Talk in a moment.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the music program with Dr. Teresa Crane.
Have you always wanted to learn how to play the piano? Maybe you wanted to learn Beethoven's Für Elise. Or maybe you like a more popular style like Jim Brickman. Or maybe you like jazzy blues. You can learn all this and more right here at Lewis and Clark Community College.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
When you open a book, you can explore new lands, make new friends, and discover new adventures. There are amazing possibilities when you open your mind to reading. Explore new worlds. Read.
60-inch screen, high definition. Football season is coming up. You can watch it right here. What do you think?
I'll take it.
Huh? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You're right. I don't need it.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffield. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader and Pat Gowan are here. Pat, we mentioned the budget during the first segment of the show. Is the state going to be able to improve the budget in 2012?
You know, I look at it this way. Sometimes the fire department can put out the fire because the fire is reasonably small. Sometimes all the fire department can do is try to contain the fire until it finally burns itself out. And a lot of big fires are like that. This is a real big fire. I think the most we can hope for state government in the throes of this level of recession is for it to try to contain the fire as best you can. Things like the unemployment benefits, trying to keep the basic services of the state up, trying to keep the bridges from literally falling down, trying to keep employment up best you can, all those things that we're familiar with. But ultimately, the fire of this recession's got to burn itself out. And the ultimate salvation for the state budget is, and as far as I can tell, only is, a return of a more vibrant economy, more money being spent, more money being taxed, natural tax growth. I think it will come. I think it's still rather a ways off. But short of another tax increase on top of the 60% income tax increase we had, and by the way, that's still, I think the rate's still lower than Missouri's. But barring something like that, I think we've done about everything we can do. We've cut a lot of things. The unions are rearing up now saying, look, Illinois has the fewest state employees per capita of anybody in the United States. And you're talking about more cuts yet. There are only so many ways to go. You can raise the taxes, you can cut services beyond what I think is a tenable position, or you can just try to hold the flames back until the fire burns itself out and the economy rebounds.
But you're talking about potentially raising taxes, and now state lawmakers are talking about possibly cutting taxes on business after having increased them in the past.
When Bradley ran for governor against Quinn, Bradley didn't want any tax increase at all. If you look at the kind of woes the state of Illinois has now after having raised the income tax to 5% from 3%, and on businesses as well, different rate. If you look at the trouble we're in after the tax increase, I cannot imagine what would be happening in trying to run state government had there been no tax increase. I doubt he would have been able to hold the line, but there would have been quite a fight over it. I'm not sitting here saying I love paying taxes or that I want to see more taxes, but we've got to pay for the services we're demanding. And now in a rough economy, this is one of the tough choices the taxpayers have to make. I don't expect taxes to increase. I think we're just going to have to bide their time. But if they could cut my taxes, I'd be delighted. But I have no idea how we're going to pay for the things we're spending or that we claim we want. We want a state police. We want people put in prisons. We want to have roads. We don't want the bridges to fall on our heads. You know, we're down to the pretty basic costs.
And we want state parks to be open, and we want museums to be open, and we want all of these things, and all of these things cost money. I like Pat, when you hear claims of, you know, we're not going to raise taxes, and you're in the fiscal mess that this state and this country is in, I don't know the alternatives. You know, nobody wants their ox gored, whatever that ox is. They, you know, if they work for the state, they don't want their job eliminated. If they're a taxpayer, they don't want their taxes raised. I understand all of that. But as you pointed out, Kent, the state raised the corporate income tax on businesses by 76% a year ago in January. All of a sudden, the squeaky wheels started spinning, and as of last week, the state legislature approved some tax rebates to Sears and CME, the corporate mercantile in Chicago. And now other lawmakers are saying, well, if it's good for them to roll their taxes back, to abate them or rebate, then it should be good for all businesses. Well, the claim was when those taxes went up, we need this income because the state's going to get deeper in a hole. Well, now all of a sudden, nah, you know, we'll give it back to them because we can figure out another way. I don't think anybody can figure out another way. As Pat said, we're down to pretty well core services, though I suspect that there are some things that could be eliminated. And I don't know how else we're going to do it without an influx of new business, or the economy rebounding and therefore sales taxes going through the roof. I don't know how the state's going to balance its budget.
You know, I was thinking about this earlier today, and we have a representative government. And what responsibility have the individuals taken? If they don't like the way the state's been run, where are they? And where have they been? How many representatives, how many senators in the Illinois State House have been thrown out by voters who are unhappy with what happened? The voters say they're unhappy that the pension debt has grown to such an extent that the pensions are in some cases as lavish as they are. People complain about this, but it was people they elected that approved all of that. And where were the individuals and their responsibility when this was happening? Where the people who elect Mike Madigan to the Illinois House make him available to be elected by the others Speaker of the House, which he's been all but, what, one term in the last 26, 28 years. Mike Madigan is the one steady constant through good times and bad in Illinois government. And if you want to blame somebody for leadership lapses, other leaders have come and gone, but Mike Madigan has been there through it all. But did the people in his district throw him out? No. Did the people in the other districts say, if you vote for him for Speaker, I'm going to throw you out? No. So it means to me that they must be generally happy with what's going on in Springfield, or at least they won't take any ownership interest for it. And so when the blame game gets played in a democracy, ultimately, and I think we're reaching that point, the hardest people to blame are the ones you have to blame, and that's the people themselves.
We need to take a break. We'll have more Metro Talk right after this.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program and WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, you know, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year mass comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album. It's called A Brief History of Love. This single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arch-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
This is Metro Talk. Jim Schrader and Pat Gowan are here. I'm Kent Sheffield. Jim, we've been pretty bleak so far, talking about a bleak budget. We talked about Rod Blagojevich in prison. I guess on another bleak topic, for lack of a better term, there aren't any names hanging out there right now, but this being Illinois, are we going to see more political corruption in 2012, or has there been enough that the politicians are going to back away and stay above board with everything they do?
We'll find another. I don't know when it will be, how soon it will be. The state of Illinois is infamous for the claims of political corruption that we have encountered throughout the years. 4 past governors have served prison time. We are now soon to be 2 in a row. We have 2 convictions in a row, anyway. There's too much power, there's too much money, there's too much control, there's too much temptation to think that just because the other guy got caught, that's just going to stop the behavior. But because the St. Louis Police Department caught a bank robber last Friday, there was still a bank robbed on Monday and nobody learned from it. I suspect that we can draw the same correlation here, that just because people get caught, criminals by and large, especially white-collar criminals, may think that they're just smarter than the last guy and they can get away with it, or they've got a better cover story, or they've got a bigger circle of friends that will take the fall for them. I don't know who it will be in 2012, but I suspect that we'll have another story of another corrupt politician somewhere in the state.
Pat, we've had a number of corruption cases here in Illinois in recent years. Have those convictions put a stop to it, or are we going to see another case in 2012?
Well, I'm afraid there'll be others, and I have a couple of reasons for thinking that. One is, of course, there are intelligent people who will argue with you now that Blagojevich committed no crime. That what he did was simply brokering power for power or power for dollars, and in a campaign system where campaign money is raised by special interests, we all know that, you've got to get the money to run from somewhere. That in a system that has that, you're going to have people that are always kind of close to the edge of the law, just doing what they have to do to get elected. And there are people who will argue that Blagojevich didn't cross the line at all, that he did it badly, but that it wasn't a crime. And there's some intelligent arguments to be made for that. I don't personally agree with them, but they're not just zany people who say that. The problem with Blagojevich as an example is he's not going to deter anybody. Because, as I wrote in a column a while back, the others who fell were all pretty much serious people, men because they were men, serious men of gravity. These were people who did serious things, who had serious accomplishments, who had serious credits to their name, as well as it turned out, crimes. People like George Ryan, who did some good things that will be forgotten because he'll be the governor who went to prison, or one of the governors who went to prison. Anybody that looks at the example of George Ryan is going to say, this is a guy who was Speaker of the House, he was Lieutenant Governor, he was Secretary of State, he was Governor. He played the game extraordinarily well, he knew every in and out, and he got caught. He should be a deterrent, and probably is. Blagojevich is a goofball. He's a guy that everybody should have seen coming, at least so we're having some interference.
I'm having phone problems, I'm sorry.
Blagojevich on the phone defending himself. Yeah. He's the one, as I said in the column, he's the one everybody should have seen coming. But politicians will look at him and say, I am not that goofy. I am not that stupid. I am not that blatant. I'm not that ham-handed. He's not going to deter me because I will definitely not be doing the kinds of things that he was doing. So Otto Kerner may be a deterrent, and Dan Walker may be a deterrent, and George Ryan may be a deterrent, but I don't think Rod Blagojevich is going to deter anything.
Well, and we've had a few more from local levels that elected officials in some cases, police officials and others that have not been exactly intelligent in some of their behavior choices as well. It just seems rampant from people of power all the way through, that they think that they're smarter than the next guy and they won't get caught.
Jim, we've been talking about a number of bleak and dreary subjects in this show.
I have no more sharp objects in my office.
Okay. Lighter topic. Are we going to be able to survive 2012 without Albert Pujols?
Oh, woe is me. You know, as my sports editor, Pete Hayes, put out, in the 11 years that Albert Pujols was with the Cardinals won 2 World Series and played in another. So that means out of 11 years, the Cardinals won 2 of 11 World Series, which is a commendable record. The Cubs would kill for that record. But that means that 9 other baseball teams without the benefit of Albert Pujols were able to succeed and win a World Series without the star ball player from the Dominican Republic. The Anaheim Angels, now the LA Angels, just signed a very lucrative cable TV deal that gave them all kinds of cash. They're trying to buy a competitive team that they've not been able to field before. They made a wonderful offer to, by all respects, a very nice guy, nice family man. He took the money. I don't blame him. As I see it, that frees up some more money for younger players and to fill that roster with something other than maybe one megastar that is overpaid.
Pat, bleak 2011 is 2012 going to be better without Albert Pujols?
Albert who? He's gone. He's history. For entertainment value, I think St. Louis fans will probably have as much enjoyment rooting against him in Anaheim as they've had rooting for him here. Who knows what his career will be like? I wish him well. I think he is a good guy who's done some good things with charities and so forth. He was good to St. Louis. He was paid to do a job here. He did the job here. He's taken a job somewhere else. I don't think that the angst is quite that bad. The Cardinals won World Series before him, and they'll win World Series again, as though the world revolved around whether you have a World Series win at all. It was an exciting way to go out. He was certainly a major piece of that, and I don't wish him ill, but here's a guy who's getting on in his years. What's it going to be like in 8 years, 6 years, 10 years? He could fall flat from the get-go. This guy may never be worth what he's being paid, and a lot of St. Louisans will enjoy it if he's not. And if he is, more power to him. We'll just find somebody else. I'm not a huge sports fan. I don't quite understand the idolization that we have of some sports figures, but St. Louis will muddle through somehow, and the Rams are going to be more and more in jeopardy in the coming couple of years, and I think attention will probably shift from the sports world a lot from losing Albert to whether we'll lose the Rams.
To quote the columnist for the Post-Dispatch, Bill McClellan, he pointed out that losing Albert was kind of a warm-up for losing the Rams, because there's a clause in the Rams contract that says by 2014, the stadium they play in St. Louis has to be in the top 25 percentile of all NFL stadiums. Well, we have the aging Edward Jones Dome. We've already proven with the new Busch Stadium that the taxpayers are not willing to foot that type of bill that it would take to build a new $560 or $570 million NFL stadium. I think the one in Dallas was almost $1 billion for that stadium. The taxpayers in the St. Louis metropolitan area don't have the stomach for that, nor should they, in my opinion. It will be interesting to see how long the Rams hang around when LA, who has already approved the building of a new taxpayer-funded stadium, get that stadium done in a couple of years. I suspect that the blue and gold may change from an STL to an LA.
See, this was a flawed plan all along. This no stadium left behind bill was never going to happen. Well, isn't it about the same thing?
Absolutely. And we bought the Rams from LA, by the way. We bought out their contract. What goes around comes around here.
And how much supporters are going to be for a team that can barely win a game?
Well, I helped Bill Bidwell carry his suitcase out to the car when the football Cardinals moved. I may be willing to do the same thing for the football Rams.
That's going to do it for this edition of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, has been here, along with Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch. We'll see you next time.